If God is truly good, if he is indeed all-powerful, why does he allow people to choose to betray, kill, abuse, lie, and abandon others? Why doesn't a God who could stop all pain intervene when a life is about to be destroyed by a human choice? Is the suffering of victims just a side effect of the freedom we've been given? Or are we facing one of fate's greatest mysteries, one that troubles even those who trust God the most? Has this question ever crossed your mind? Have you felt that silent unease when you see evil winning for a time, while goodness seems cornered, weak, and in the background? Have you ever wondered how a God of love can permit someone to oppress another with such cruelty without immediate divine intervention? If these questions have ever bothered you, you are not alone. This is one of the oldest and most complex questions of human existence, and perhaps one of the most misunderstood. What you're about to discover may surprise you. Contrary to what many people think, God's apparent absence in the darkest moments does not mean abandonment. In fact, for C.S. Lewis, the Christian author, Oxford professor, and one of the 20th century's most profound thinkers, the fact that we have freedom of choice is the greatest proof that God didn't create puppets. God created beings capable of loving, not out of obligation, but by decision. And that changes everything. After all, love that isn't free is just control. Absolute control here seems efficient, but it will never be true love. Imagine a world where every action of yours was forced by an invisible hand, where you said, "I love you," without feeling it. A world where it was impossible to make a mistake, yes, but also impossible to grow, to forgive, or to change. A world without bad choices, but also without redemption, courage, or sacrifice. Because you call that life? Freedom? Humanity? Stay with me until the end, because understanding this tension between freedom and its consequences will make you see God's justice in a new light. Perhaps for the first time, you will understand that the pain we see today, as unjust as it may seem, only exists because there is a greater good sustaining the entire system: freedom. And it is precisely this freedom that allows evil to be temporary and love to be eternal. C.S. Lewis did not ignore human suffering. He himself faced profound losses, crises of faith, and both physical and emotional pain. But it was in the midst of anguish that he found one of the greatest spiritual treasures: the awareness that God did not create us for blind obedience, but for a relationship. And true relationships require freedom. This means that the same God who could force us to do good chose to take the risk of our saying no, because only then would our yes have real value.
Have you ever thought about that? Have you realized that the evil that so frightens us is not a result of God's will, but of his respect for our will? Free will, so often trivialized or distorted, carries within it the most dangerous and sacred tension of our existence. It's a gift, but also a risk, a present that can be used as a weapon. This is why so many of the tragedies we see in the world don't have an easy explanation. They are direct consequences of human choices, not divine will. God doesn't desire evil. He allows it because he loves us too much to control us. And that is not weakness. It's a kind of strength that most of us have yet to truly grasp. Have you ever been through this? Have you been at a place of pain caused by someone who chose evil? Or perhaps, if you are honest with yourself, you have been the one who made that wrong choice, even unintentionally. All of us, at some point, carry the consequences of freedom in our hearts, whether as victims or as those responsible. And it is in this place of raw reality that we begin to see free will, not as a distant philosophical concept, but as a daily battlefield where every decision has eternal weight. What Lewis teaches us is that God does not abandon us on this battlefield. He is there, present, offering wisdom, discernment, and grace. But he doesn't force us. He doesn't compel, because his love refuses to violate the very freedom he gave us. Here is the key shift. When we understand this, we stop seeing God as the cause of pain and begin to see Him as the one who sustains us through it. He is the one who transforms even wrong choices into opportunities for restoration. He is the God who redeems, not the God who manipulates. And perhaps it is this very freedom that most profoundly reveals His love. What follows will deepen this insight, because while free will explains why evil is possible, it also shows why love is so powerful. Get ready to dive into a perspective that can transform not only how you think, but also how you choose to live from now on. Freedom, a divine gift with a dangerous edge. From the very beginning of creation, human freedom was a gift God granted with dignity. We are not robots, pre-programmed only to do good. We are creatures with our own will, capable of choosing, loving, and obeying, or not. And that's where the both beauty and the danger reside. C.S. Lewis reminds us that free will is the greatest gift we receive, but also the most risky, because with it we have the ability to choose good or evil. And this choice is real. It is profound. It is a daily reality. God could have created beings who would obey Him automatically, like spiritual machines without questions, but that would not be true love. Love only exists where there is freedom. Obedience only has value when it comes from a heart that chooses to follow, even when it could rebel. Heaven only makes sense when the path away from it also exists.
But when we treat this gift carelessly, it becomes a weapon against ourselves. What was meant to bring us closer to God can become a chasm between our soul and the light. Free will is like a road with invisible forks, and every decision we make without reflection, without seeking the truth, can lead us farther away from good. Lewis said that God made us with freedom because He wants children, not puppets. He wants a relationship, not a program. But as with any true relationship, there are risks. And the story of humanity is, in large part, the chronicle of bad choices made in the name of this freedom. War, selfishness, pride, and corruption, idolatry. All of this is born when humans decide to use their free will as an instrument of absolute autonomy detached from the source of truth. The most unsettling thing is that evil does not invade by force. It is almost always chosen, not always with total awareness, but always with some kind of internal permission. Sometimes it's a small concession, just this once, and it's not that wrong, and before we know it, we are trapped by habits, behaviors, and thoughts that moaned our soul away from the light. But notice this. The problem isn't in freedom itself. The problem is in what we do with it. Freedom is like a sharp sword. It can defend or wound, depending on the hands that hold it. When guided by God, it is liberating. When guided by the ego, it subtly enslaves us. The most painful part is that God respects this freedom to the very end. He doesn't force, push, or invade. He calls, He invites, He knocks on the door, as Jesus said. But the choice to open it is ours, and often we open the door to evil and leave good outside, ignoring the subtle warnings, the voice of conscience, and the signs of the Spirit. The uncomfortable truth about our choices. What happens when we freely choose evil? This is what we will explore in more depth. But before we continue, I invite you to pause. Have you noticed where your choices are leading you? Has your free will been a path of light or a dark shortcut disguised as freedom? This is the starting point for reflection, because understanding the value of free will is the first step to using it as a gift and not as a sentence. How can something so precious and sacred as freedom turn into a path of destruction? This is one of the great hidden truths about free will that C.S. Lewis helps us see with disconcerting clarity. For him, human freedom is not a flaw in the divine system. On the contrary, It is the highest expression of God's love for his creatures. A love that treats us not as puppets, but as children. And children to truly love must have the right to choose. True freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, but about being able to choose between good and evil. And here's the central point. The possibility of choosing good is only real because we can also choose evil. God did not create evil, but he created free beings. And free beings like us can use that freedom to reject good.
Was necessary, because without it, there would be no authentic love, no true relationship, and no humanity. But sometimes what should be a bridge to love becomes a doorway to the abyss. What was a gift turns into a trap, because misused freedom doesn't make us freer. It imprisons us, and this is one of existence's most uncomfortable truths. Imagine a fish that decides it wants to be free from the water. It leaps out of the aquarium, determined and brave, but how long does it survive outside the environment for which it was created? Not long. In the same way, we were created to live in relationship with God, with truth, with goodness. When we decide to distance ourselves from this in the name of a supposed independence, we are like the fish out of water, technically free, but spiritually suffocated. C.S. Lewis said that every sin carries within it the seed of slavery. Evil never presents itself with its true face. It arrives sneakily with a sweet voice, convincing arguments, and promises of pleasure. It's never direct or grotesque. Sometimes it disguises itself as personal freedom. Other times as a simple concession. And when we realize it, we are no longer in control. He wrote that hell is paved with good intentions and small choices. No, we say to the truth, the seemingly harmless step toward ego, vanity, or pride. None of this seems very serious at first, but these choices pile up on top of each other, mold our character, our convictions, and our destiny. They mold the person we are becoming. Because that's exactly it. With every choice, we are either building ourselves up or tearing ourselves down. The human soul is not static. It moves. It transforms. It either draws closer to or distances itself from God. Lewis saw hell not as a torture chamber imposed by an angry God, but as a natural result of someone who repeatedly rejects God. The soul that moves away from the light doesn't find darkness by chance, but because it walked there. And then comes one of the most cutting phrases Lewis ever wrote. The doors of hell are locked from the inside. This changes everything. It shows us that evil is not something that happens to us against our will. No, evil is nothing that in some way we choose. A dark room where we lock ourselves in and throw away the key. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear, pride, unhealed wounds, or unexamined desires. The irony is that we think we're taking absolute control. We are actually being led. No one is truly autonomous in the voice that on the word. We always serve something, always. It could be God or our pride. It could be the truth or the lies we tell ourselves. It could be love or fear. But the idea of a completely neutral, loose, directionless freedom is a modern illusion. Lewis saw with great depth that choosing evil does not make us masters of ourselves, but servants of our most disordered impulses. The path back home. And yet, Even after so many wrong steps, even after so much time locked inside, there is a way back. Because the same free will that led us away can bring us back. God never takes that key from us. He respects human freedom with the reverence that escapes us. He doesn't invade. He doesn't force. He doesn't compel. He waits patiently, lovingly, like the father in the parable who looks at the horizon every day, waiting for the son who left by choice, but who one day can return, also by choice. C.S. Lewis himself lived this return. He was a skeptical intellectual, wounded and distant from God. But there was a turning point, a choice, a surrender. And from there, he began a journey of rebuilding, where he was not only restored, but became a channel of restoration for so many others. Just as evil molds the soul, so does good. Choosing good is not always spectacular. Often it is silent, discreet, and hidden, but it has transformative power. Though it said that saints are not born, they are made from small daily decisions, from acts of humility, repentance, and courage. Good is not just the opposite of evil. It is an active path, a conscious choice. And each choice for good molds us a little more into the image of God. It realigns us with our origin, reconnects us with our essence, and makes us more human in the highest sense of the word. As these choices accumulate, our identity is firmed up. Because in the end, as Lewis so masterfully wrote, there are only two kinds of people: those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God says, with sorrow, "Then be it so." There is no neutrality. There is no safe indifference. Every small act, every small response is pushing us toward one of two destinies: closer to God or farther away from God. The most disconcerting thing is that this destiny doesn't begin after death. It begins now. It begins inside. It begins in the quiet places of our minds and hearts, and the silent choices we make when no one is looking. Heaven and hell are not just future places. They are spiritual realities that begin to form in the soul right here, right now. The silent paradox of the freedom. I want to go even deeper into this topic. If our choices mold our destiny, how can we clearly discern what is leading us closer to God and what is silently pulling us away? What are the signs, the symptoms, the internal clues that reveal the spiritual course we are on? Comment below. I'm on this journey too. There are the silent paradox at the heart of human freedom. That which is in essence a sacred gift, the ability to choose, can become an invisible trap. At first it seems simple. Do what you want. Follow your own desires. Live without restrictions. But C.S. Lewis warned us that sin always carries the seeds of slavery. It's like a fish that, in the illusion of independence, jumps out of the water. In the first moment, it feels free. In the second, it begins to die. This misdirected freedom doesn't make us more human. It makes us less. It separates us from our essence and alienates us from the truth. The most unsettling part? This process is rarely brutal at the start. It's subtle, almost imperceptible. The chains don't appear all at once. They're added link by link, choice by choice. Small concessions, great ruins. How evil sneaks in, Lewis wrote that the road to hell is smooth and gentle, with a sought floor, without sharp turns, without landmarks, and without signposts. This is how evil operates. It is sneaky, seductive, and perfectly reasonable. It rarely knocks on the door looking like a monster. Instead, it disguises itself as personal freedom, a legitimate desire, or a simple, it's not that big of a deal. And the most dangerous thing is that it almost never begins with major decisions. Evil enters through small concessions, a justified choice, a value you've compromised on, a just this once. The soul begins to give them at almost invisible points, and before it realizes what's happened, it no longer recognizes who it has become. It's no wonder Lewis said the road away from God is not a leap, but a slow and unconscious slide, fueled by repeated no's to the truth. The spiritual price of the wrong choice, a fragmented soul. Every choice we make shapes us. It transforms us and leads us to become more like Christ or more distant from him. What happens when we deliberately choose evil? Our soul begins to fragment. We disconnect from the source of life, truth, and beauty. It's like a sculpture being chipped away little by little, losing its original form. For Lewis, hell was not an external punishment inflicted by God, but the natural result of a soul that, throughout its life, moved away from him. It's a deep internal process of spiritual disintegration. It's the consequence of someone who, in full freedom, chose to drift away. And the most frightening part is not realizing that you are breaking yourself inside, all while believing you are in control. The doors of hell are locked from the inside. This phrase from Lewis is one of his most powerful and perhaps the saddest. It reveals that hell is not an imposed prison cell. It is a decision that, when repeated many times, becomes permanent. According to him, people go to hell because they choose to, not only once, but in daily installments, through small rebellions and constant denials of grace, until at a certain point, they no longer want God. They no longer desire him. And the door locked from the inside can no longer be opened. Not because God won't enter, but because the person no longer wants to leave. This image is profoundly unsettling. It confronts us and causes us to reflect. How many doors have I locked from the inside? How many times have I said no to God's gentle nudge, believing I was just being myself, exercising my freedom?
The deception of total autonomy. No one is truly their own. We live in an era that idolizes autonomy. The idea that I own myself and no one can tell me what to do sounds appealing to modern ears. But Lewis deconstructs this illusion with clear insight. No one is truly autonomous. We always serve something. The question is, what or who is on the throne? If it's not God, it's the ego. If it's not the truth, it's the opinion of others. If it's not love, it's fear. Full freedom only exists when we are rooted in good. Otherwise, we end up enslaved by impulses, vices, and lies we swore we could control. Lewis saw this not as a moralistic doctrine, but as an accurate description of the human soul. There is no neutrality. With every choice, we're handing ourselves over to something that will either free us or devour us. Is there a way back? Yes, there is. And this is perhaps one of the most beautiful messages in Lewis's entire body of work. The very free will that allowed us to get lost is the same one that allows us to return. God never forces us. He invites, he waits, he prepares the way. But the final decision is ours. Lewis himself lived this return. He went from a staunch atheist to a passionate Christian, from a skeptic to a writer of deep faith. He knew from experience that the soul can be rebelled even after great ruin. And the first step is to recognize that we need help.
that our freedom did not lead us where we thought it would, that only love can bring us back home. If evil saves us all, so does good. But unlike evil, good requires intention. It requires small daily decisions to forgive, to serve, to stay silent when you want to retaliate, to speak when it would be easier to flee. It's on this journey of conscious choices that we are transformed. Lewis said that saints aren't born ready, they're carved, decision by decision. Every time you say yes to the truth, yes to humility, yes to love, you become more like the Creator. This doesn't happen in a spectacular way. It is almost invisible, but it is profoundly real. Good has a silent power to regenerate everything that evil has tried to destroy. This leads to a sobering truth. In the end, there are only two kinds of people. Those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those who hear from him, "Then be it so." This phrase alone should make us rethink everything. It shows that eternity is not something that simply happens to us. It is something we choose every day with every decision. Heaven and hell don't start after death. They start right here in our hearts, in our intentions, in the small yeses and nos that shape us. This makes sense, right? I'm on this journey too in the comments. This lets me know this conversation is truly reaching you, and together we can go deeper